Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ann Baker. I'm the Vice President of National Peace Corps Association. And this is, I believe it's the 6th of our career webinars. We've been doing this monthly for the last 6 months. And they're presented by Dr. Rhonda Ansted, who is herself a returned Peace Corps volunteer. And she has her own business, the Be the Change Career Consulting. We've had a number of great sessions, and I look forward to the one today, which is particularly timely with all the unfortunate things that are happening in our news right now with the coronavirus and all. But this is really on staying healthy during the job search. And so I look forward to today's discussion. I will remind you again at the end, but if you haven't yet done so, please do register for this webinar. And on our website, I'll put the link in the chat. And also join NPCA. We are your community. We are mission-driven social impact organization, free membership, and we are here to support you. If you sign up for this webinar, then you will get the follow-up information with the slides and other important information, and also asking you for your input on this and what future sessions you would like. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and let Rhonda take it from here. I'm very excited to see you all joining us and learning more about how we can stay healthy during the job search. Over to you, Rhonda.
Thank you so much, Anne. It is a pleasure to be back. And so I just am going to start by asking a little bit of forgiveness. I originally imagined this webinar to focus in on navigating the transition between re-entry, reverse culture shock, and the job search. I think that this is something that's really important that not all RPCVs get once we get back in the United States. During our COS training, they give us some information about that. But then when we get back home, it's often a challenge. So as I was working on this, it was Susan from my Facebook group who was a part of, who's joining us here today on our webinar, and she asked a question about how is the coronavirus going to affect the job search. And I realized that that question actually has obviously a lot of timeliness, but also does fit in with kind of what I was wanting to talk about with the concept of re-entry and the job search. And so I made some really quick adjustments. And so I'm expecting typos and things that I didn't plan for. But really, like Anne said, we're talking about how to stay healthy during the job search. And so that's both physical and emotional mental health, and also strategies that you can do while you are making that adjustment from returning from Peace Corps into the job market. And so we've got a lot of people here today, and it looks like a lot of people have been here for a while. And so I will probably go over some things fairly quickly if they're not as relevant. And we'll spend some time going forward and making sure that this really meets your needs. And there'll be times throughout the presentation where I will invite you to ask questions. We'll also have a big chunk of time at the end so that, and I also want to preface with, I am not a medical expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not going to be giving any medical advice, but I do want to basically give you some solid strategies to use during times of uncertainty. And that's where we're at right now. And so I really hope that that collectively we'll be able to give each other ideas about how you can be effective in your job search when we're going through a lot of adjustments. And so let's start with what are some of the common experiences of people when they first come back. And so basically there's always this unexpected situation of how much things have changed in your absence, or things that you didn't notice before, and suddenly you're like, where did that come from? And then coming to grips with all the different ways that you have changed. And we often don't see that until we're back into quote unquote familiar territory. And then some of the ways that our experience has affected us comes to light. Often we get expectations from friends and family to be the way that we were, or to come in with a certain kind of attitude, or to just fit back in. And often there's a lack of understanding about what we're going through, and the expectation is that we make the adaptations to make sure that things are moving and flowing smoothly. And then there's often this time of frustration of things that didn't used to bother you are now really super annoying, or that you're just noticing what doesn't make sense to you anymore that you might have taken for granted. Spending a couple of years overseas broadens our perspective, and when we're coming back, there's often that experience of just like things not making as much sense as they used to. And then a lot of people run into the fact that friends and family aren't super interested, or don't know how to ask questions about what our experience was. And so we're like trying to process everything that we've been through on our own. And then kind of going back to those unexpected changes in you, and you know, your social circle might have gone through some adjustments and changes since you've been gone. And so this feeling of where do I fit in often comes up. And all of this obviously contributes to a feeling of overwhelm and exhaustion. And sometimes that can turn into self-doubt. Am I doing something wrong? And sometimes depression. And so what we want to do is to acknowledge all of this and to find strategies to mitigate that. And then I also want to talk about just general experiences of people who are unemployed and looking for work. And so that sense of uncertainty about your finances, financial stress is really overwhelming. And so that, again, is something that people who are unemployed generally are dealing with. And then when we don't have a job, then we are missing that kind of structure that, that having a regular external routine gave us. And feeling of isolation and a lack of purpose and goals. And again, there's a sense that, that we don't always know who we are if we don't have a job. So much of our sense of status and identity come from the work that we do. And then that also, all of this uncertainty can really turn into hopelessness. And human beings are very good at extrapolating that what is happening right now is going to happen indefinitely into the future. And so that can give us a sense of hopelessness, even if our rational minds know that things are going to change and are going to get better. So now we've got a situation of where we are throwing in the coronavirus, and what are some of the aspects that that brings into the situation. And so obviously right now, as things are, you know, within the past couple of days looking to be getting dramatically worse, then there's a ton of uncertainty about how is this going to play out and how is this going to affect me. And I don't know about you guys, but there has, at times like this, sometimes reading the news is not always the best thing, because everyone is completely panicking and talking about, okay, we're going into a bear market and people are getting laid off. But those are reasonable fears that we might be heading into a recession. And when I returned from South Africa in 2009, I returned back in the United States right in the middle of the recession. And that is very nerve-wracking to walk into. Obviously, worries and fears about getting sick. And then with people canceling events right, left, and center, we've got fewer opportunities to network, which is just one of the foundational job search strategies. And so I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, and a lot of things are shutting down. I'm originally from Seattle, and so I kind of keep my eyes on what's happening there. And they've recently asked that any events with over 250 people no longer take place until things have changed. And so that also can just kind of compounds onto feelings of isolation that you get when you're returning back from Peace Corps and when you are and when you're unemployed. And so I just want to take a moment and ask you, I'm going to keep talking for a little bit, but I want to ask you, how are you doing? What are some of your thoughts and concerns and questions about what's happening right now? I mean, is there anything specific that you would like me to address, or is it just like, what's going on and what am I going to do? So if you want to just go to the chat box and just start letting me know how you're feeling about the situation right now, about your current situation, and what questions do you have about how the coronavirus might be affecting your job search. And so as we go through, I'll continue to answer some of those questions. And like I said, towards the end, we'll be talking about that as well. But I really do want, since I kind of changed this up at the last minute, I would love to know what kind of advice or what kind of questions do you have? And so one of the things, as people are starting to write their questions and concerns in the chat box, to just point out a couple of things that when all three of these come together, the things that I'm most concerned about as a career coach and as someone who cares about RPCVs and people who are looking for work and trying to find their meaning. And that is, number one is the isolation. I think that is the main concern, that all of these things, that's something that we have in common. And so as the coronavirus gets broader, then I think that'll bring up fewer opportunities to connect. And so as I'm taking a look at the chat, people are wanting to know about the length of time that it might take to go through the interview process now that companies are starting to come to grips with what's going on, and how it might affect government hiring. And so I think that, so we're talking a lot about timing, right? How are these things going to play out when I'm looking for jobs ASAP? How is this going to affect that? And so we'll talk about some of those things as we go forward. And but I also want to acknowledge that I don't have a crystal ball. And so since we're right at the beginning, there's a lot of things that nobody knows. And so what I'm going to talk about is kind of broad, systemic things to be aware of, and also strategies and hope. And so Jared just put in the chat box about an interview on Monday and worried that it might be canceled. And that gives me an excellent opportunity to talk about things about using technology to conduct interviews. And so virtual interviews have been something that has been growing in popularity, especially when people are having to travel long distances. Often people will start with phone interviews, and then the next step will be something over Zoom or Skype. And then third, it will be an face-to-face interview. And so I do think that there is going to be a lot more of that. And I also think it kind of depends on where you're located at, in that I think the larger metropolitan areas are going to be much more concerned about this concept of social distancing. So that I think it's certainly going to be useful for you to prepare yourself for video interviews. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. I can give you some tips about how to maximize video interviews, and how you can really use this to your advantage, and how to expect that. And it might even be something that you can let people know that you're open to that. And so Jared, I think that you might want to get back in touch with the people who've invited you to interview, and just let them know that you've got the capacity to do a video interview, or face-to-face, whichever works out best for them. And so that gives them options and shows that you've got a lot of flexibility. And at the same time, that can also kind of help you mitigate that feeling of just that wait and see, that, you know, I don't have any control in this situation. And so by asking questions and offering alternatives, that gives you some agency, that gives you something to do. And I will tell you this, we're all figuring it out together. And this is something that every place I walk around, people are trying to understand, how do we greet each other now? And how close can we get to each other? And is this something that I should be worried about? Or is this all overblown? So there's just a lot of uncertainty. And when there's a lot of uncertainty, then people often jump to the worst possible conclusions. And what we want to talk about is how to be rational, and how to, you know, be responsive to what's going on, but at the same time to stay positive and to be able to walk that line of preparation, but also keeping yourself positive and healthy. Because when we react negatively, then that actually affects our immune system. When we're stressed, when we're not sleeping well, when we're not taking care of ourselves, then that opens us up. And at this point, you know, the chances of us getting the coronavirus are still relatively small, but there's still colds, flus, allergies, all of that stuff going around. And so the more we can focus on our emotional and physical health, basically the better everything's going to be. And this is not to be Pollyannish as much as to give you, you know, there's a lot of science and research that talks about our emotions and how that impacts our body. So that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. All right. So let's just go through briefly different strategies to have once you've just recently moved back to the United States, but I think is also pretty relevant for job search at any point. And so, so I'll just kind of go through what's most relevant for recently returned RPCVs, what's relevant for everybody. So obviously focusing on your health and wellness, that is my advice to everybody at this point. Drink lots of fluid, get plenty of rest, exercise, and again, focus on staying positive. And so that might mean taking large amounts of breaks from the news and just being clear about where you want to get your information from and what kind of conversations you want to have with people. So giving yourself structure, but not too much, is something that I really recommend, especially for recently returned RPCVs, because we often throw ourselves immediately into the job search because we're really freaked out. What if I don't get a job? How am I gonna, like, I don't want to live with my parents forever, or with me, I had a house. Am I going to be able to pay my mortgage? And so when we've got all of that kind of fear and anxiety and insecurity, having some kind of structure helps us to kind of prioritize and build routines. That's good for mental, emotional, and physical health. But we also don't want to be over-structured. I don't recommend that people treat the job search like a full-time job. We often get that advice, treat it like your job, and that means I should be working on this 40 hours a week. That's not a really healthy way to approach the job search. So giving yourself some structure, but not too much, finding that balance, making adjustments is really helpful when you're feeling overwhelmed and when you don't have the day-to-day structure that a job gives you. I really recommend, and again, this might be changing a little bit right now, but when you first come back within your first month or maybe two, to that volunteering, that could be at the public library, that could even be doing something online, which it might be some of the areas that you want to pursue going forward. But anything that gives you external structure is really useful. But also giving to others is a way that gives us a sense of purpose and meaning. And that's one of the things that is that gets threatened when we're unemployed. And so, again, not saying that you should volunteer 40 hours a week, but if there's something that you can do 1 or 2 days a week, or something that, for 2 or 3 hours a day, that, again, gives you that structure, gives you a sense of meaning, but doesn't take so much energy and resource that you don't have anything for looking for paid work. So again, it's a fine balance, but it's one of those things that I really recommend, especially because volunteering can also be a way to find a job. And so if you're volunteering, if you're interested in working with immigrants and refugees, then finding an organization that focuses on that and start volunteering with them, then that gives you access to them. They get to see kind of how you work, and that does lead to jobs. And it's not a guarantee, but it's a really good strategy. And a lot of the strategies that we want to apply are the ones that serve in multiple areas. So just a couple of other things. Waking up at the same time each day. So I don't want to tell you what time that is, but sleep and sleep hygiene is going to be a theme throughout this, because again, getting enough sleep helps our immune system. It helps our mood. And one way to make sure that we have good sleep hygiene is focusing on when we wake up rather than when we go to sleep. So if you are tossing and turning, but you normally wake up at 8 a.m., then keep to that. I also want you to work within your natural rhythm. So if you're a morning person, get up earlier. If you are a night owl, then wake up at a time that fits your biology, but just make it consistent. And so here I've got my strategies for how much time do you put into your job search. And so I'm saying 3 to 10 hours a week, not a day, but a week. And so you want to do a little bit of that so that you are making forward progress, but you also don't want to burn out on the job search. It's such a tough process anyways. And so I really recommend giving yourself a cap. And so 10 hours a week, that's 2 hours, 5 days a week. That to me is a very reasonable amount of time to dedicate to your job search. When you first come back, I recommend that you do a lot less, but going forward, and if you're not feeling burnt out, or if you're getting some traction, some momentum, then maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. But like I said, we don't want to treat it like a full-time job. It's too hard. And the other thing, kind of going back to keeping a positive attitude, and that is keeping your sense of humor. And so I think this is good advice for everybody personally, to not take yourself too seriously. But when you've just come back, when you're going through reverse culture shock, when everything is where you're like, why is this so hard? This is my own culture. I speak the language. To find the absurdity in kind of what you're going through. That can be really helpful to turn stress into something that gives you a laugh. And so look for things that make you laugh, look for things that bring you joy, and then don't keep that to yourself. Share that with other people who can get it. So often people who just come back, they'll stay in touch with people who are in their Peace Corps cohort. And especially if you returned at the same time that they did. And so texting people or messaging people that are going through the same thing and saying, hey, this was really weird, or this really made me smile today. It's a good way to not only to work through your positivity, but also to share that. And so let's talk about the other contagion, and that is kind of our moods and how we communicate with each other. And so if we can look for humor and joy and share that with others, then at least within our social circle, that starts building a network of support. This is super important. And so that's one of the ways that I recommend that you keep positive during all of this. And so I basically touched about, stay in touch with your cohort, but also look for ways to connect with people who've also lived abroad. People who have always lived in the United States, they just have a different perspective than we have now. And that can be really frustrating or demoralizing. And so connecting with people who, again, know what you're going through is crucial. It's really, really, really important. And so if you've got meetups with, international blah, blah, blah in your city, then that's a way to kind of connect with people who understand. And so another thing is, this can be in person, this can be virtually, but connect with someone to support you in self-care, especially exercise. So if that's like going for a walk or a run with somebody, or simply checking in with somebody. Did you exercise today? Did you take a walk outside? So these are all really good strategies, again, no matter where you're at in the job search. And okay, so just really briefly want to talk about why taking breaks is really important, because we can often get into a mindset of I've got to be working on my job all the time. So sitting for long periods of time can hurt, can actually keep you from focusing, can help you gain weight, and can contribute, even though we don't know exactly how, to anxiety and depression. So that means getting up and stretching every 45 to 60 minutes, really super useful in the job search and in life overall. There's also long-term health effects, diabetes, heart disease, but I'm more focused on how does it affect you right now. So movement and exercise increases blood circulation, improving memory and focus. Really one of the most effective ways to combat depression. And so even mini breaks, even something for 30 seconds, really helps with your emotional, mental, and physical health and your productivity. So I'm not going to belabor that, but I just want to let you know that here's some things that to remind yourself, oh, actually, it's better for my job search if I take a 15-minute walk around the block than if I stay here and crank out another application. Other ways of staying motivated. So here is kind of the counterintuitive component, and that is to basically be easy on yourself, to not say, I'm going to get a job in a month, because you can't control that. And so I want you instead to be like, okay, it's going to take me some time to adjust, and that's okay. So you set yourself up to succeed by lowering your expectations so that you're not on top of everything else going to face your own disappointment, because why 3 months later am I still unemployed? This is what happens. It takes time. And I think it's reasonable to expect that it is going to take longer. And so let me just address some of the questions that people ask, is this going to lengthen this thing? How is this going to affect NCE eligibility? And so what I think is useful is to expect that things are going to take longer now, but also it's going to affect different departments and different industries on different levels. So basically the federal government, they've already been budgeted for certain kinds of positions. So they already have the money to bring people on. The federal process already takes a whole lot of time. It might get longer if people are sick. I was going to say working from home, but if they're working from home, they're still working. But if they're working from home, things actually do take slower because they got to get used to things. And so expect things to slow down. The federal government, though, this fiscal year is going to keep doing what it's doing. And so, yes, there might be more video interviews. And yes, there might be some inexplicable delays, but like I said, the federal government already has a ton of inexplicable delays. That's going to be par for course. And so again, for other job processes, it always takes longer than we think it should. And we always wonder what happened. Are they hiring somebody else? I think it's useful to remember that the people who, the employers, the people who are hiring are people too. They're also facing a time of uncertainty, and they're getting a little distracted and they're making other plans. Maybe again, they're being told that they have to telecommute. And so they're setting all that stuff up. And so things are going to take longer. And so that's why it's really important not to give yourself deadlines around things that you can't control. So that's why I'm talking about lowering your expectations and how that can be helpful to set yourself up to succeed. So the other thing is not only to expect challenges and distractions, but to plan for them. And so I'm going to give you a four-step process that I actually try to use on a daily basis. And so if you've attended other webinars, this might be familiar to you, but I think it's really, really helpful to know that life is kind of weird right now. So what can I do and what can I control? So the 4-step process that I go through is to start with setting my goal. What do I want to do today? Okay, I want to work on my job for 2 hours. And then think about the outcome. If I meet this goal, what is that going to lead to? How's it going to make things better? So if I'm working on my job, that's on my job search, then that is going to lead to a job that I love. And that's going to give me financial security. That's going to give me meaningful work. I mean, and so spend some time thinking about kind of the ideal situation of what getting a job is going to do for you. And that kind of helps us to, again, change our attitude from task orientation and struggling with getting things done to this future orientation of this is what I'm working towards. This is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to feel. That changes the neurochemistry in our system. And that helps us focus on how we're going to overcome obstacles rather than getting so task oriented that once we bump into something, that's what stops us. Because there's going to be resistance. Might be external, might be internal, but what is the most insidious is how do you get in your own way? And so basically, the common thing that is probably going to get us distracted is our fears over the coronavirus or our fears of being unemployed long term. So that might be one thing. Another thing often is because if we're doing work on our computers, then it's very easy. Well, let's just play this game over here, or let's just, go onto Facebook, or let's just, see what's going on in the news. So whatever's going to keep you from meeting your goal, think about what is that likely to be. And once you've identified that, and that should be fairly easy because it's how you do it every single day. And then to think about, so what am I going to do when that happens? I said if here, but for me, it's always a matter of when. And so if I start to move toward something that is entertaining or distracting instead of focusing on what I'm going to do, then my plan, for example, is to take 3 deep breaths and then ask myself, what am I getting anxious about? And then is there anything that I can do about that right now? And if it is, I do it. If there's not, then I go back to my work. So that's my personal strategy. And honestly, it kind of changes from day to day. So that's why I recommend doing this on a pretty regular basis. Just know that challenges and distractions are going to happen. So how do you make sure you keep them from derailing all your efforts? So then going back to kind of lower your expectations or related to that, rewards are super powerful and they don't have to be anything big. It could be that I give myself an hour to play on the internet after I've done all the work I told myself I was going to do. And so, but you're rewarding for what you can control, for the actions that you actually do and not for the outcomes, because again, you don't have complete control over that. So don't save it up like I'm going to celebrate once I get a job. Nope, you celebrate your efforts. And so we've talked about that in some previous webinars. And so one thing that I think Anna and I forgot to mention is that you will be getting, if you register, you will be getting a follow-up email, and that will have a list of previous webinars as a part of them. And so, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but there's a lot of different ways that you can create rewards that keep you motivated. So we already talked about mini breaks, day-long breaks. Make sure you're not spending all your time either searching for work or avoiding searching for work or thinking about searching for work or beating yourself up for not searching for work. Do what you can do and then set it aside and then do something healthy. Exercise, get some rest, hang out with friends, talk to people on the phone, that kind of stuff. And so then the self-care, meditation, exercise, connecting with supporting friends, being in nature, all of these have research behind them to say that this can keep you healthy and happy. I have a program called My Career Design Studio, which is a job search and creation career coaching guide, basically, that's online. And there are about 15 exercises or activities under, quote unquote, the art critic that are also research-based and ways to kind of keep you motivated and focused. And I just want to show you what that looks like really briefly. So this is My Career Design Studio, my art critic. And so this is a place you come whenever you're feeling stuck, unmotivated, overwhelmed, insecure, or overcome by doubt. So it gives you different options, and for each option, like activities to rejuvenate or refresh. Then you have several different choices: taking a break, taking a breathing break, relaxing into safety, just one thing. You click on those links and you get instructions on how to do something to refresh your thinking, to rejuvenate you. And so this is, again, an online program. You'll get access, a link to that, and it comes with a 7-day free trial. So definitely get on there, go through some of the activities, find ones that work for you, and do those on a daily basis. So I want to talk a little bit, I'm just going to go through this super quickly, and if you want me to go over this more, I can. But this, again, is more for recently returned RPCVs. And so since a lot of the people in the webinar have been back for a while, you might have done this already, or it might not be as relevant. And so basically, when you first go back, our minds are just kind of cluttered with what just happened to me and what am I going to do with this? And again, we're trying to figure out who we are and where we belong. But there are ways that you can reflect on your Peace Corps experience and integrate it in a way that supports your job search. And that's what I want to talk about. And so really, it's about uncovering your accomplishments. And that helps us in multiple ways. It helps us to be in the job interview. It helps us working on our resume. We want to think about not just what we did, but how we made things better. And so often that gets really muddled. And so by going through, this is another 4-step process, by going through this, not only will that help you with the interview and with your marketing documents, social media profiles, that kind of stuff, but it will also remind you, okay, I did some really, really cool stuff. And so when we're going through all this doubt and I don't know what I'm doing anymore, I thought my life was so clear and now it's not, this is a process to help remind you of the amazing stuff that you've done. And so, so this is something that you've probably heard. It's pretty common when you're writing resumes or preparing for interviews. I've got a slightly different twist on it. But the thing that I want you to start with is, for all the different phases of Peace Corps, start with, what were things like at the beginning? What did you walk into? And then what challenges did you face? What did you do to overcome those challenges? And then how did things get better because of you? And so what I want you to think about is not just how many people did I serve, how many people came to this training, but also the interpersonal relationships, the intangible things that happened, your own personal growth and learning. This really helps you to understand the positive impact of Peace Corps on your life. And so you're just really, so when you're thinking about the obstacles and the challenges, you don't stop there. Then how did I navigate through them? And sometimes it's like, well, I left my site. And so then you can think of that not in terms of, well, that was a failure, but no, that was an action that I took to overcome that. And then from there, I want you to also think through what strength does that showcase for you? So whether that's creative thinking, whether that again is cross-cultural competencies, interpersonal relationships, resilience, grit, for everything that you talk about, translate that into a strength and then own that strength as a part of you. Those are things that you're gonna use during your job search. And so the last webinar that I just did for NPCA was about leveraging your strengths for the job search. And so by going through this process, that'll give you, okay, here's some of the strengths that I have, and then you can listen to that webinar and get some ideas of how that can serve you going forward. Oh, yeah, right there. And so basically you might have noticed situation, obstacles, action, results. Gives you the acronym SOAR, which I love because it's very positive and active. And so thinking about how did you soar throughout your time in Peace Corps? And then as you get a better understanding of what employers are looking for, you can develop a SOAR story for each of those. So if they want something to talk about your teamwork, then think about when did you work on a team, situation, obstacle, action, results. So I also talked more about this in writing a resume. So that is another webinar that I recommend that you take a look at as well. Okay, so again, I'm going to go through this really briefly. If we've got any recently returned RPCVs, this might be helpful. If not, just kind of toss this away. So for your first week back, rest, reconnect. Focus on readjustment and don't have high expectations for yourself. Self-care strategies, good sleep hygiene, exercise, and journal. So weeks 2 through 4. So that's when you start developing a routine. Week 1, just like have that be a free-for-all, but then start, when am I going to exercise? When am I going to wake up? Make it simple, but start making one while you see what other RPCVs are in your area and do some of the reflection, Peace Corps experience reflection activity that we just talked about. And so then for weeks 2 and 4, the routine, good sleep hygiene, exercise, journal, and starting to reach out to people. And then month 2, to develop your job search strategy. So our first webinar this year was on creating a job search strategy for the new year. This will be a really helpful webinar for you to take a look at. It'll walk you through step by step. Conducting informational interviews, like I said, reviewing NPCA webinars or Peace Corps webinars. They've got a YouTube channel with a lot of job search strategy stuff. And so those are some things that I recommend that you do in month 2 and start focusing in on targeting specific jobs and or organizations. And other webinars talk about why I don't recommend casting a wide net and applying for everything. And month 2 is a really good time for you to focus in on that. My Career Design Studio walks you through this process. So if you need some guidance, that's a good way to go. This is also a good time to work on your resume once you know what kind of job you're applying for. Resume is a marketing document. not a chronology of what you've done, even though it has that. So you want it to set you up for what you want to do. And self-care strategies, everything plus consistent routine, monitoring your emotional health and well-being. Month 2 tends to be where we dip down, and this is where we're at most risk for depression. So just keep a watch on yourself, maintain your ties with people to kind of help you through that. And then going forward, continue informational interviews, applying for jobs, asking for advice. Okay, let's go quickly. So strategies through for dealing the job search right now. So basically take advantage of technology. So stay connected with people virtually, if meeting face-to-face, if they're uncomfortable with that or you're uncomfortable with that. There's a lot of Facebook and LinkedIn groups. So hopefully everybody here is on RPCV jobs. So that's really good for job leads. But I also want you to think in terms of support. And so I've got a Facebook group as well. It's called, I think it's called Designing Your Calling or Designing Your Career. I should really know what it is. But there will be a link to that in the follow-up email that you'll be getting from us. And so just ways to get connected with people, like-minded people who are interested in the same things you are. Facebook and LinkedIn, really good resources for that. You also, so people sometimes for the first time are going to be working from home. Working from home can drive you crazy. There was a really recent article on the Washington Post, I'll send you a link to this as well, about this guy who like worked from home, self-isolated as kind of a test on what would happen if he had to, you know, be completely cut off from the rest of the world. By day 5, he's going a little crazy. So by connecting with people who are working from home, asking for help and advice, that could actually be useful for them too. It helps them get more social interaction and feel needed during a time of insecurity. And so don't keep yourself from networking just because you can't go to networking events or something like that. Reach out to people. Our webinar on the job search through the holidays has a ton of activities and advice on how to find people to network with. And so if by any chance you are interested in the travel industry and decided that you want to come home and book cruises for a living, obviously that's not going to happen right now. And so one thing, no, this is not going to be forever. This is not the new normal. This, there's going to be other diseases that come around, yes, but it's not going to be this one. And so, so make sure that you're planning with your future in mind. Don't just think the next week or the next month, but kind of where you want to be 1 or 2 months from now, or 4 or 5 years from now. And so you might want to adjust what you're focusing on to something that also is a good fit for you, or that is related to the kind of work that you want to do. The other thing, so Hunter, I'm seeing your question about the best way to reach out to companies. We'll talk about that really briefly. And when you do that, when you're talking to somebody that might not be hiring right now, but is going through a lot of transition where everybody's going to work or, you know, people are sick, one of the things that you can offer is like, I am happy to do a short-term contract with you and work from home if you need some additional help in the short term. And so that's a way that you could actually help create a job for yourself rather than rely on job postings. And that's networking is the most effective way of getting a job. It always has been, it always will be, it is especially true right now when people aren't necessarily posting jobs or industries are slowing down, it doesn't mean that there's a lack of need for work, but that they might not, number one, know exactly what they need, or they might not be able to hire someone long-term right now. And so by talking to people, asking questions to understand what they're going through right now, looking for opportunities where you can make a difference and say, hey, I'm open to this, then that is a way that, again, everybody can win. You get some money, you get some structure, they get the help that they need. And so just really quickly, if you want some daily tips and tasks to keep you moving, to help you with self-care, to help you join community, please join my Facebook group. And also, like I said, my career design studio is a step-by-step process, walks you through everything from figuring out what you want to do to negotiating salaries. And so, yeah, now I'm just gonna kind of go through anything that I might have missed. And so the best way to reach out to companies and organizations to set up an informational interview through who you know or who you've got a connection with. And fortunately, you know, the Peace Corps gives you the best network known to mankind, as far as I'm concerned. And so what I recommend is going onto LinkedIn, and then searching for, you know, going to, you can search for a company, and then on the left-hand side, it'll say, I think, like people or employees. If you click on that link, then you can search for people who, you can put in Peace Corps and see who else who works for that organization that has Peace Corps in their LinkedIn profile. That's a good person to reach out to. The other would be people that are doing the kinds of jobs that you want. And so it's not reaching out to an organization. It's not calling up their main switchboard as if they have one anymore, or their info@organizationname.com, but it is identifying people inside of them where either you've got a connection through Peace Corps or through your alumni. And basically you just keep asking until someone meets with you, not the same person. You ask one person, you follow up with them. If they don't respond, then you ask somebody else. And your response rate typically is around 25%. And so it's one of those things, if at first you don't succeed, try again. And so that's really what I recommend to keep you going, is by really, LinkedIn is the best person and organization database that exists right now. So utilize that to find people that you can reach out to. I also recommend, if you can, to find their work email rather than connect to them with LinkedIn, because it's just a small percentage of people on LinkedIn who use it regularly. Okay, are there any other questions that I should be responding to? Any other questions that you guys have? And Anne, have I missed anything? So again, please register for this in the chat box and just put in a link. It's not too late to register, even though the webinar is over. So, so that way we can get back to you with the resources, and we'll also give you an evaluation, which we definitely appreciate and review and use to plan our events going forward. So Anne, is there anything else that I should address?
Well, I see, if you haven't seen it, there's a long chat in there from Michael. Thank you, Michael, who gave some advice to Eleonora and others on here on some of the networking from his experience. So I encourage you to take just a peek at that before we go offline here. And thank you for sharing that, Michael. It's very helpful.
Yes. And let's see, I'm just trying to read it right now, but of course, yeah, all of this is really great advice. So, you know, basically, like you said, international development, it is who you know. And so leverage us, leverage fellow RPCVs. So even though you don't know someone directly, you basically do, because we've gone through really similar experiences. And so making sure that, you know, that you just talk to people. If thinking about informational interviews seems too overwhelming, then I call them conversations, you know, with people, with like-minded individuals, or building community. So obviously alumni are really, can be super powerful and give some really good job leads. And yeah, Michael's got really good advice. Approach these interactions with genuine curiosity about what these people do and how they got there. People like to talk about themselves. Give them an opportunity to do that. And a lot of people like to help other people too. Give them an opportunity to do that as well. And over 50%, the number ranges, but over 50% of the jobs in the United States that aren't filled, that are filled, are never posted. And so if all you're doing is looking for jobs online and you're not talking to people and asking for leads, do you know of anything where I might be a good fit for? Then you're missing a lot of opportunities. And the only way to find those are to talk to people. And so again, face-to-face interactions are in general the best way of connecting with people. But now we've got technology, you know, now you can see people face to face through Zoom and Skype. And so leverage that. And so there are just some really minor changes to be made to keep doing the effective job search strategies, which again are networking, during times when people are kind of freaking out about the virus. And so use that. Okay, let's see. For some reason, there we go. My mouse isn't very well. Okay. Okay, excellent. So, so if there's anything else, please feel free to email me, and you'll be getting my contact information in the follow-up email. And I am, or you know, join my my Facebook group. And but otherwise, know that you're going to get through this. And what we're doing is just providing some effective and hopefully useful strategies to keep you going. So I really appreciate everyone participating and coming to this event today. And Anne, is there anything else that you want people to know?
Again, I'll just highlight, if you haven't registered, please do, just because that puts you on our email list, and we will send you a link to follow up on this with a recording and a questionnaire and a survey to let us know, you know, evaluation of this, and also let us know what we need to do going forward. I think we're already sort of thinking about making some adjustments to some of the future events based on your feedback. So please do provide your feedback. If you haven't yet joined NPCA, please do. It's free. We're here to serve you. We want to hear from you, and we want to respond to what you are needing right now and down the road as well. So I really want to thank Rhonda for taking the time and doing this today. It was a very helpful, very valuable session, and we'll stay on until everyone comes off, but I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. But thank you for joining us today. And the next one is April 9th, I believe. And we will send you a reminder on that one as well. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you again soon.